The storm outside didn't just rattle the windows. It seemed to creep through the cracks in the ancient walls of the orphanage, wrapping icy fingers around every sleeping child except one. Isadora was awake, sitting upright on her narrow cot, heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. Thunder rolled like a scream across the sky, but it wasn't the storm that frightened her. It was a silence inside her head, the absence of the dreams that had haunted her every night since she was 5. Tonight, for the first time in years, the voice that usually whispered to her in her sleep had gone quiet, and that terrified her even more. She slipped her feet into the cold of the floor, her white nightgown brushing the tops of her toes, her breaths shallow and sharp. The room around her was filled with the stillness of unconscious bodies, girls huddled under threadbare blankets. But something pulled her forward. She padded silently down the hallway, her footsteps ghosting over the wooden floor, instinct leading her where logic refused to follow. The old chapel stood at the end of the corridor, its doors always locked after sunset, but tonight they hung slightly open. That's when she felt it again, a familiar warmth like breath on her neck, followed by a voice low, velvet-drenched. "I'm still here." She froze, not because she was afraid, but because she missed that voice. It had been her secret, her protector, her demon, her god. She stepped inside the chapel and saw him no longer just a figure in her dreams. He was real. He stood in the shadows where candlelight could barely reach him, tall, terrifyingly beautiful, wearing a suit too perfect for this world, and eyes too cruel for heaven. "You're not supposed to be real," she whispered. He stepped forward, his presence pressing against her lungs. "And yet, here I am." Her breath hitched. His face was sharp, sculpted with the arrogance of kings and the sin of devils. The heat of him radiated like fire beneath his skin, and when he looked at her, she didn't feel human anymore. She felt like prey, chosen, marked. "Why now?" she asked. "Why not before? You promised me when I was 10. You said when the blood moon came that I would take what's mine." He smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was hunger, and then he reached into the air and pulled something invisible from the space between them. It red, almost liquid. Her name, written in infernal ink, hovered in front of her. "Your soul was promised to me long before you were born, Isadora," he said. "But I was patient. I watched you grow. I waited for the night when your innocence would be ripe enough to harvest." She shivered. "Why me?" "Because your blood sings in my language. Because your dreams are born of my shadow. Because you are the daughter of the witch who betrayed me, and I always collect my debts." Her knees buckled, but he was there before she fell, catching her without touching her. She floated weightless, staring up at a face no angel would dare. And she hated how much she wanted to fall into him. Not just his arms, but his fire, his ruin, his madness. "I can't belong to you," she said, but it sounded like a lie. He leaned down, brushing his lips just inches from hers. "You already do." From that night, everything changed. She could feel him everywhere in her veins, in her sleep, in the way the candles in the chapel flickered when she walked past. The nuns whispered about her behind locked doors, crosses trembling in their hands. One by one, the girls who shared her dormitory began to fall ill. Nightmares plagued them, visions, a darkness none could explain. And Isadora she started to like it. There was a power growing inside her that she couldn't control. She knew things she shouldn't, spoke words in a language that made the mirrors crack. One night, she touched a girl who mocked her hand. The girl never spoke again. Not a sound, not a scream, just silence. And somewhere, in the corner of her soul, Lucifer laughed. She begged him to stop. He told her she hadn't seen anything yet. Then came the day of her 18th birthday. The blood moon rose in the sky like an open wound, red and endless. The orphanage, tucked deep in the Carpathian Mountains, was surrounded by storms that cut power and separated them from the world. The nuns locked the chapel, burned incense, chanted prayers in a language older than Latin. But nothing could stop him. He walked through the fire like a prince returning to his throne. And when he called her name, the doors opened themselves. She didn't resist. She walked toward him like a bride toward her doom, wearing white, with eyes wide open. He took her hand, and the whole world trembled. He led her through the chapel, down into the catacombs where bones whispered secrets and walls bled stories of sin. There, in the heart of the earth, he showed her what she really was. "Do you see now?" he asked, placing her hand on a book bound in skin. "This is your legacy. You were never just a girl. You were bred for this, raised in light. So you'd crave the dark, made human so you'd choose the devil. But I didn't choose you." He pressed his mouth to her neck and her knees gave way, not from fear but from how much she wanted him to devour her. Everything she'd been taught screamed run, but her body whispered stay. And when his tongue tasted her pulse, the air itself choked with fire. She was no longer a virgin, not of body, but of soul. Her will was gone, and in its place stood a hunger. He didn't take her not yet, he was too cruel for that. Instead, he showed her the future. Every time she touched the book, she saw what she would become, a queen in hell, dripping in diamonds made of broken promises. Lovers at her feet, demons in her name. And she liked it. But the choice wasn't hers yet. She had one final test, one final sign. And it came wrapped in the face of a boy who was sent to save her. His name was Elias. He arrived at the orphanage as a missionary. Blonde hair, stormy eyes, the kind of beauty that felt like sunlight after a war. He smiled at her like she was the only thing left worth believing in. And for a moment, she believed it too. That maybe she could still escape this fate. That maybe love could outshine lust. That maybe she wasn't destined to be Lucifer's bride. Lucifer watched, of course, always watching, letting her play with hope like a cat plays with a dying bird. He even encouraged it. Go on, he whispered one night, his voice echoing from her mirror. Kiss him. Tell him everything. See if heaven forgives you. So she did. She kissed Elias like he was the last prayer she'd ever say. She told him about the dreams, the voice, the book, the power. And to her surprise, Elias didn't run. He held her, touched her face like it was made of light, and he promised to fight for her soul. That night, Lucifer didn't come. But the next morning, Elias was gone. All that remained was a smear of blood in her bed, a feather too black to belong to any angel, and a note in Lucifer's handwriting. Now you know what happens when you forget who you belong to. They buried Elias quietly, without ceremony, without a name. The nuns said it was a wolf. The police said it was an accident. Isadora didn't say anything. Her mouth remained sealed even when her soul screamed. Her heart, if she still had one, cracked like thin glass. She stared at the spot where he had died, a red smear beneath the sheets, and wondered how love could disappear in a single night, how someone with a heartbeat and a promise could be erased so completely. She hadn't even told him she loved him. She hadn't even told him goodbye. Now, all she had left of him was blood beneath her nails and guilt carved into her bones. Lucifer didn't come that night. He let her drown alone in the silence. He wanted her to understand lost not, just feel it, but live in it, because he knew it would bring her closer to him. She didn't eat for 3 days. The girls at the orphanage whispered behind closed doors. Some said she was cursed, others said she was dangerous, the bravest said she was grieving. But none of them looked her in the eye anymore, because when they did, they saw something ancient, something wrong, something watching on the 4th night. He returned. She was curled beneath the pew in the old chapel, shivering not from cold but from the ache in her chest. She didn't look at him when he entered. She didn't speak. She just breathed, slow and broken. He walked to her like a man strolling into his garden, like he hadn't just slaughtered the only pure thing left in her world. His voice was gentle. I did you a favor. She laughed, bitter and cracked. You killed him. I removed a distraction. His eyes glinted. You'll thank me later, I'll never thank you. He knelt beside her, reaching out to trace her jaw. She slapped his hand away. I should hate you, she said. You should, he agreed, smiling. But you don't. And that was the worst part. She didn't. She tried. She forced herself to replay the memory of Elias's mouth on hers, his trembling hands, his soft apologies. But every time, Lucifer's face replaced his every time. She saw those cruel, perfect lips whispering her name in the dark. Every time, she imagined what it would feel like to stop fighting and simply fall. Why? Do you want me? She asked finally, staring at the dust dancing in the candlelight. What makes me so special? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a folded letter. Her mother's handwriting. Old, ink water stained, she snatched it, hands shaking. He let her, she gave you to me, he said willingly. Before you were even born, she was powerful, reckless. Thought she could strike a bargain and run. She was wrong. Isadora unfolded the paper, heart pounding. It wasn't long, just a few words. To the one who burns brighter than fate, forgive me. I gave you to the only one who could protect you from this world and from yourself. Love, Mother. She read it 3 times before the words lost meaning. Lucifer watched her silently. I never knew her, she whispered. You knew her blood, he said, and it's loud. That night, she dreamed of fire, endless fire. Her mother dancing through it, laughing like a goddess, cursing angels and kissing demons. And then she saw herself naked, crowned, covered in ash and diamonds, walking through a throne room made of bones. And beside her, Lucifer, smiling like she was the only thing he'd ever wanted. She woke up gasping, wet between her thighs, hungry not for food. For him, the days blurred after that. She stopped fighting, stopped praying, let the darkness come. Lucifer took her away from the orphanage on the 7th night. No one tried to stop him. The nuns looked away. The girls hid. She didn't pack anything. She walked barefoot across the threshold, white nightgown trailing behind her like a ghost. He opened the door to a black car and she climbed in. The seats smelled like roses and rot, like temptation. They drove through forests, through cities, through centuries. She slept with her head on his lap, and when she woke, he was stroking her hair like a lover, like a father, like death itself. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. "Home, where's that?" He looked out the window, beneath the place where God stopped listening. The house was a cathedral turned inside out. It sat on a cliff above a black sea, twisted in architecture no human should understand. The windows blinked. The walls breathed. The floor hummed with voices too old to be words. But it was beautiful and terrifying. Like him, he led her to a room lined with mirrors, none of which reflected her face. In the center, a bed made of obsidian and silk. He told her she would stay there until she was ready. She didn't ask ready for what. The first week, she wandered the halls. Paintings whispered as she passed. Doors led to memories that weren't hers. Once, she found a child crying in a corner, only to realize it was her own younger self, locked in a loop of abandonment. Lucifer watched from the shadows, always close, never touching. The second week, she began to change. Her skin glowed under candlelight. Her eyes turned darker. Her dreams turned violent. She kissed herself in the mirror. She stopped mourning Elias. She stopped missing who she was. On the 15th night, she found him in the garden. He was shirtless, his back a canvas of scars and sigils. He was standing in a circle of ash, barefoot, eyes closed. Power pulsed around him like a second heartbeat. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Calling the old ones?" He said. "Why?" "Because they'll want to meet their queen." She laughed, but it stuck in her throat. "I'm not your queen." He opened his eyes. Not yet. She stepped into the circle. The ash didn't burn her. The ground didn't shake. The sky didn't protest. She reached out and touched his chest. His heart beat slow and deep, like thunder beneath stone. "I don't want to be good anymore," she said, then stopped pretending. He kissed her. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't soft. It was punishment. It was prophecy. It was a promise written in teeth and tongue. She moaned into his mouth, gripping his waist like he might vanish. But he didn't. He stayed. He consumed. They fell to the ground. His hands roamed her body like he already owned it. He didn't ask permission. He asked nothing. Because she was no longer someone who needed to be asked. She let him take her, right there, in the garden of black roses, beneath the eyes of demons and stars. She screamed when he entered her, not from pain, but from the unbearable truth that she had never felt alive until that moment. She clawed at his back, cried out his name, and when she came, the world split open. After, she lay beside him, skin marked with bruises shaped like possession. "Is it always like this?" she asked. "No," he said, "only with you." The next morning, she wore a red dress he left at her door. She walked through the house like it belonged to her. The walls whispered her name now. The mirrors showed her future. The shadows bowed when she passed. Lucifer followed her everywhere. He was obsessed. Not with her body, he'd already tasted that, but with her becoming, with her power, with the fire in her voice when she commanded silence, with the way she began to say his name not as a curse, but as a prayer. And yet, even then, even after everything, a piece of her still mourned the light, still remembered Elias' hands, still wondered if she could have saved him. Lucifer noticed. Of course, he always noticed. So one night, he brought her a gift. It was Elias alive, or at least almost. He stood at the door to her chamber, eyes hollow, body scarred, lips stitched closed, not dead, not living. Something in between. "I brought him back for you," Lucifer said, voice soft. She stared in horror. "Why?" "To remind you what love costs." She ran to Elias, touched his face. He flinched, tears slid from his eyes, but he couldn't speak. His mouth had been sealed with magic. "Undo it," she screamed at Lucifer. Let him talk. Lucifer stepped forward. You still love him. She hesitated. That was all it took. Lucifer waved a hand, and Elias' body dropped like a puppet cut from its strings. Dust gone. I offered you the world, Lucifer said, and you hesitated. She slapped him. He didn't move, didn't react. But later, when she was alone, she found the walls bleeding again, and the mirrors refused to show her face. She realized then she had one choice left, a real one, to surrender completely or to die. She walked into his throne room barefoot, wearing only a robe, her hair wild, her eyes burning. He sat on a throne made of fire and shadow, crown tipped back, wine in hand. I'm ready, she said. He raised an eyebrow. For what? For everything. For you. For what I am. He stood, walked to her, took her chin in his hand, then, kneel? She did. He placed a ring of bone on her finger, kissed her forehead, and whispered a single word in the language of the damned. Her spine arched, her mouth opened in a silent scream. And when it ended, she was no longer Isadora. She was his. The days after her binding to Lucifer blurred like blood and water. She no longer recognized the girl who had once knelt in prayer, who once clung to hope like a lifeline. That girl had been burned away, piece by fragile piece. What remained was something else, something divine in its damnation. Lucifer's queen, his flame, his curse wrapped in beauty. And yet, as she roamed the halls of his infernal palace, she felt something shift, not in him, in herself. The more she embraced the crown, the more she saw the truth. She wasn't just chosen, she wasn't just claimed. She was created for this role, but not to be ruled. She was born with fire in her soul, not to warm someone else's throne, but to take it. All of it. Lucifer watched with careful amusement. He had seen it before, ambition growing like rot. But he underestimated one thing. Isadora didn't want to overthrow him. She wanted to own him. Their nights turned savage. Not just with lust, but with power. They fought, they fed. They made love like enemies, tasting war and kissing the wound. But always, always, he reminded her, you are mine. And she smiled. Because he was wrong. One evening, while he hunted in the pit of souls, she wandered into the forbidden chamber, the chamber of forgotten light. Inside, it pulsed a mirror, not glass. Something older, alive. It showed her a version of herself untouched by Lucifer's fire, dressed in white. Eyes soft, holding a child. It was Elias' child. She fell to her knees. The mirror pulsed. The child cried. Her chest ripped open with a pain she hadn't felt since the orphanage. And from the crack in her soul, a light poured out. Not holy, not cursed, just hers. Lucifer returned that night and found her glowing. You opened the mirror, he said, double quotes, yes. You saw what might have been, I saw what still could be. His jaw tightened. You forget who you are? No, she said. I remember everything now, including who I was before you. He grabbed her wrist, hard. I gave you purpose, and I gave you love, she whispered. You just mistook it for weakness. He threw her against the wall. Her spine cracked the stone, but she laughed. Fire licked her skin, but she didn't burn. She stood chin high. I'm not yours anymore, she said. You broke me. But in breaking me, you forged something you can't control. Do you think you can kill me? He asked. No, she said, but I can unmake you. And then she spoke the name he had buried, the one his father gave him. The name that could unravel the first star, the last fire. It tore from her lips like a scream forged in creation's womb. Lucifer dropped. He writhed on the ground, shaking, hissing, begging. The palace screamed. The sky tore open. Shadows fled, and Isadora stood above him, her eyes pure flame. I loved you, she said, but I love myself more. She walked into the throne room, climbed the steps, and sat where no queen ever had. The crown floated down from the ceiling, forged from blood, bone, and betrayal. It rested on her head like it had always belonged there. Lucifer vanished, not dead, not exiled, just gone. She didn't weep, she ruled, not with cruelty, not with mercy, but with balance. A new kind of hell bloomed under her gaze, one that whispered not of punishment, but of truth. Souls came not to suffer, but to face themselves. And in doing so, they burned cleaner than heaven ever allowed. Her name was no longer Isadora, it was something older, something all worlds came to fear and worship. She was not his queen, she was the queen. And in the silence that followed All things bowed not to a devil, but to a woman who had once been chosen, and chose herself instead.